I'm here with Alexander Mercouris, editor-in-chief of the Duran. Alexander, let's look into what's happening with the Ukraine scandal, the money that has come from the United States, from the IMF, from the EU, the billions. I think you've documented it. It's somewhere around 45 billion. Tallied it up at the end of the day, went into Ukraine. And we have reports now coming up, one from Ukraine MPs saying that 16 million are now documented to have gone out the door and back towards the Bidens. And Rosemont Seneca and these groups with Biden and Devin Archer and Christopher Hines and all these guys. And on the other side, you have State Department documents that were released via the insistence of Democrats, of a Democrat group that wanted to get the Giuliani transcripts. They actually had the State Department release the documents, and the State Department documents corroborate the 16 million that the Ukraine MPs are saying went out the door. They actually have the money trail, Alexander. Let me read you some of these numbers here, just so we document exactly what's going on. Now, Ukraine MPs, there's a title on Zero Hedge, which I think sums it up best from these Ukrainian MPs. And the title says, Ukrainian MP claims 7.4 billion Obama-linked laundering puts Biden group take at $16.5 million. The claims are made by Ukrainian MPs Dubinsky, who they're really looking into the paper trail here as to what was going on the Ukraine side. And of course, you have another Ukraine MP who actually had a press conference about all of this, Derkach, who went on record as well, Andrei Derkach, and he went on record as well, kind of documenting the money that went out of Ukraine from all these institutions that were funding the Ukraine project at the time, the Biden-led Ukraine project. And now we come to the other side of the coin, which is the U.S. Documentation of the paper trail. And Alexander, here's another title from Zero Hedge. State Department releases detailed accounts of Biden-Ukraine corruption. A liberal watchdog group's attempt to nail Rudy Giuliani has backfired in spectacular fashion after their Freedom of Information Act request resulted in the U.S. State Department releasing detailed accusations of corruption against the Bidens based on interviews with former Ukrainian officials who were in charge of the investigations. So what we have here, in essence, is a group called American Oversight that wanted to nail Giuliani on his investigation as to what was going on into Ukraine, the talks he had with Mike Pompeo and with various other State Department officials. And it prompted the State Department to release those conversations and those documents, those records. And this is what they show, Alexander. They show two interviews, one with Shokin and one with Lutsenko. So you have the two prosecutor generals. The equivalent would be the two AGs in the U.S. Here's the first part coming from Shokin. Mr. Shokin stated that there are documents that list 5 criminal cases in which Mr. Lochevsky, he's the front man of Burisma, is listed with the main case being for issuing illegal gas exploration permits. The following complaints are in the criminal case. Number 1, Mr. Lochevsky was laundering money. Number 2, obtained assets by corrupt acts of bribery. Number 3, Mr. Zlochevsky removed approximately $23 million out of Ukraine without permission. Number 4, while seated as minister, he approved 2 addition entities to receive permits for gas exploration. Number 5, Mr. Zlochevsky was the owner of 2 secret companies that were part of Burisma Holdings and gave those companies permits which made it possible for him to profit while he was the sitting minister. Mr. Shokin further stated that there were several Burisma board appointments were made in 2014 as follows. Number 1, Hunter Biden, son of Vice President Joseph Biden. Number 2, Joseph Blade, former CIA employee assigned to anti-terrorist unit. Alexander Kwasniewski, former president of Poland. And number 4, Devin Archer, roommate for the Christopher Hines, the stepson of Mr. John Kerry, United States Secretary of State. Alexander, let's go now to the Lutsenko documents and records as released by the U.S. State Department. And here we go. Biden's and Burisma, Lutsenko, quote, went on to say that he began looking at the same case Mr. Shokin was looking at, and he believes Hunter Biden receives millions of dollars in compensation from Burisma. He produced a document from Latvia that showed several $million that were distributed out of Burisma's accounts. The record showed 2 companies and 4 individuals receiving approximately $16 million in disbursements as follows. Alexander, the companies: number 1, WireLogic Technology, $14.6 million. Number 2, Digitex, $1.9 million. The individuals involved: Alexander Kwasniewski, $1.150 million. Alan Apter, $302,000. Devin Archer, amount not revealed by Latvia. Number 4, Hunter Biden, amount not revealed by Latvia. Mr. Lutsenko stated that there was also a payment of $900,000 to Rosemont Seneca Partners, LLC, for consulting fees. Hunter Biden is a partner of Rosemont Seneca Partners, LLC, along with Devin Archer, and the dates of this transaction are approximately anywhere from January to December 2015. According to Mr. Lutsenko, the $900,000 invoice was for services rendered for lobbying by Joe Biden. Alexander.
Well, there it is. I mean, can I just say, this is, of course, the story. This is the issue. Hunter Biden's connections with Burisma and Joe Biden's connections, because ultimately we must always remember that the origins of this scandal are supposed to be, are the fact that Joe Biden managed to get the Ukrainians to sack Shokin. That was the Procurator General who was investigating Burisma, where Joe Biden's son was a director. And we now have all this record of all these payments that was made to this group. And it seems that we've got both Ukrainian evidence for this coming from Ukrainian MPs. And of course, you've got State Department evidence, which corroborates what those MPs are saying. Now, this is what we are not supposed to be investigating. Donald Trump is supposed to have wanted all this to be investigated. And of course, what we hear, what we're being told, what we are hearing from the Democrats is that it is supposedly extremely inappropriate and an abuse of presidential power for the President of the United States to seek an investigation of what look like, on the face of it, extremely dubious practices, financial practices involving the former vice president's son and the company the former vice president was looking for. That's one thing. I wanted to make that point because, as I said, this seems to me a very bizarre thing. I mean, I'm not actually convinced that Donald Trump ever did, in fact, ask the Ukrainians to reinvestigate Burisma. That's not how I read that transcript. But put that aside, if you accept the Democrats' interpretation of the transcript, what they're basically saying is that it's inappropriate to ask the Ukrainians to investigate all these things, even though a Ukrainian company is involved, even though the Ukrainian people's money is apparently being laundered and stolen in this fashion. I have to say that I find that extremely strange. But let's put this all aside. Let's put the impeachment question to one side and let's concentrate on the specific allegations and the information that's coming out here. We get Ukrainian MPs saying one thing, that Burisma was involved in laundering money and paying large sums of money, $16 million, to this group of people. We have the State Department meeting with 2 successive Procurator Generals of Ukraine, Shokin, whom Joe Biden famously got sacked, Lutsenko, who was his successor. They corroborate the information about $16 million having been paid to this group. I would add, from Lutsenko's evidence, that 16 million is the minimum that was paid. You will notice that the Latvia, as we know, is a major clearinghouse. It's a major laundering area for laundering dirty money coming out of Ukraine and Russia and the rest of the former Soviet Union. The Latvians are refusing to provide information about specific payments that are made to Hunter Biden, and it may be that there are more payments that we as yet don't know about. But anyway, $60 million. It completely vindicates. I think this is another point I want to make. It completely vindicates what Giuliani is saying. Giuliani is going around saying there's been this huge amount of corruption involving all sorts of people, involving Joe Biden, Hunter Biden, Kniasnevsky, Devon Archer, all sorts of other people in Ukraine. The media has been trashing Giuliani. He's been threatened with investigations. There's talk that proceedings against him are going to be initiated in the Southern District of New York, the district attorney's office there, which, by the way, he used to formerly head in a previous career. So huge irony there. So Giuliani's being attacked for all of this. Giuliani's being accused of campaign finance violations. And what do we have? We have all the evidence. We have this evidence that cries out, I think, for a proper investigation. If Giuliani wanted it investigated, and if Donald Trump wanted it investigated, I don't see that they were doing anything wrong. I see them as carrying out an important public duty. That's how it looks to me. And I'm going to make a guess. That's how it looks to most people. Now, I wanted to make those points. I think we can now go beyond this and talk about what these enormous payments were clearly all about, because it seems to me that, again, payments of this size made to people like Hunter Biden, to Kniasnevsky, to Devon Archer, to Rosemount Seneca, to all these entities. Notice that we're never told what these payments are actually for, what the work that these people were doing for Burisma actually was. You have this label, this bland thing about consultancy services, which can mean a lot or it can mean nothing. What we know, all that we know for a fact, is that Hunter Biden apparently attended board meetings twice a year, and that they didn't even take place in Ukraine. So he was paying huge amounts of money, and it turns out it's a lot more than the $50,000 a month that we were hearing about. He was being paid huge amounts of money for attending two meetings a year. If you go back in time to our earlier videos, I was explaining, we were discussing this concept that exists in the former Soviet space, which is called Krisher. Krisher is, this roof, this idea that you pay people, important people, for protection. It's a kind of mechanism that you go to somebody who's really important and is going to protect you from all kinds of other things that may be going on. And what we also learn, both from the State Department and from these Ukrainian MPs, is that Burisma and its supposed owner, Mr. Zlochevsky, but you're quite right, I think most people assume that he's only a front man, and we've discussed on previous programs why all the facts clearly now point to Igor Kolomoisky, who's one of the really big legal oligarchs, as being the person behind all of this. It turns out that Zlochevsky, and by extension Kolomoisky, are the subject of multiple investigations in Ukraine for money laundering, for corruption, for every conceivable financial crime you can think of. They were also, by the way, Zlochevsky was also under investigation in Britain, but from the Serious Fraud Office here. There were two cases brought against him here in Britain. And it looks like a classical case of Krisher. Grochowski and Kolomoisky, faced by all these investigations, they bring this group of very influential people onto the board of Burisma. They call it consultancy services. They pay them these enormous amounts of money. This in itself provokes investigators in Ukraine, people like Shokin, people like Lutsenko, to look into what is going on or want to look into what is going on. But what happens is that despite the obvious conflict of interest, Biden, Vice President Biden, the Vice President of the United States, the man who's been formally appointed the point man of the United States government looking into affairs in Ukraine, the man who is chairing cabinet meetings in Ukraine, manages to use his position as Vice President of the United States to tell the Ukrainians, if you don't sack Shokin, who is investigating the company, the corrupt company, which is employing my son and which is paying my son and other people these huge amounts of money, I am going to withhold from you. I'm going to make sure that you're not going to get $1 billion in US loan guarantees, which you desperately need if your economy is going to avoid default and total collapse. Now, if this doesn't cry out for investigation, please tell me what does.
Yeah, this is the Bidens and the Obama White House really getting involved in an oligarch turf war. The two biggest oligarchs, Kolomoisky and Poroshenko.
Correct.
And we detailed it in other videos, Alexander. I'll just summarize it again very quickly. The IMF wanted the Ukraine to pump up their energy prices.
Yes.
Huge profits.
Yes.
Poroshenko wanted his cut.
Yes.
Zlochevsky, Kolomoisky, in other words, said, screw you. Who are you going to get for protection when you have the president shaking you down?
Yeah, Poroshenko, the Ukrainian president.
Yeah, who are you going to get if you're Kolomoisky? How high can you go? You go to the Vice President Biden, who was point man of Ukraine. So I mean, that's in a nutshell. Rudy Giuliani was getting really close.
Yes.
To what was going on in Ukraine, and he was also getting really close to identifying Ukraine as the genesis of the Russiagate hoax. And there's news coming out, Alexander, that says Giuliani actually has evidence. He hasn't released it, so we can't verify it. But they say he has evidence that Glenn Simpson made trips to Ukraine and fabricated much of that Manafort black book that, was circulating around, that black ledger. And he also helped kind of manufacture much of the Steele dossier, which you've detailed many times, you believe, also comes out of Ukraine. So Glenn Simpson, if Giuliani has this evidence and does produce it, Glenn Simpson was in Ukraine way back in 2015-16, getting this whole Russiagate hoax going. And we also have this news, Alexander, that there are U.S. senators right now who are requesting suspicious activity reports on several people and entities connected to Hunter Biden, including Devin Archer, Christopher Hines, who else? Hunter Biden, Devin Archer, Christopher Hines, Burisma Holdings, Rosemont Seneca Partners, Rosemont Seneca Bohai LLC, Rosemont Capital, Blue Star Strategies. I got this from a tweet via Sarah Carter, which says Senator Grassley and Ron Johnson seek, quote, suspicious activity reports or documents that financial institutions file with the Treasury's Financial Crimes Enforcement Network when a case of money laundering or fraud is suspected. So that's coming out of Sarah Carter.
Yes, a couple of quick things. Firstly, I have actually heard Giuliani say on Glenn Beck's program that he has information, that he has definite information that Glenn Simpson of Fusion GPS traveled regularly to Ukraine. So he said that he's got that information. And he also said that he has information that a lot of the source material that got into the Steele dossier came from Ukraine also. I've actually heard Giuliani say those things. And I mean, he seemed pretty confident when he said them. So, I mean, I'm assuming, and bear in mind, this is a man, who, as he pointed out on Glenn Beck's program, this is a, experienced professional investigator. I mean, he was the federal prosecutor in the Southern District of New York. He has a long history of investigating financial crimes and all kinds of things like this. So I can't imagine that he's somebody who's easy to fool. I mean, so that's absolutely the first thing about this. Secondly, it is inevitable that now that all this is coming out, because it is, I mean, this is the sort of paradox, the crazy paradox of this impeachment investigation. The Democrats went all in to try and implicate Trump in all sorts of nefarious and bad activities. They utterly and completely failed. I mean, they've not been able. I mean, they've not established any clear crime anyway. They've not even established a quid pro quo that I can see. What they have done, what they have managed to do, is to highlight for the American people this very complex, but frankly very creepy story of what Joe Biden and Hunter Biden and all of these people were doing in Ukraine. Now, that is really extraordinary because we had been hammering away at this on the Duran for years and years and years. I remember articles, you've actually written articles way back in 2014, before we even started the Duran. We only started the Duran in May 2016, but you were covering the story even before. And you will find one or two other people were also sort of asking questions about this. Anyway, but we weren't getting heard. I mean, people were not interested in the articles you were writing. I mean, you can go back and you can find, they'd have a couple of thousand views and nothing more. And now what's happened? We've got people like Grassley asking for this whole thing to be investigated. So this is what the Democrats have achieved. And, we're now hearing stories that more and more of them are getting cold feet. Lots of them are going around saying, is this impeachment even a good idea at all? Shouldn't we just go for a censure motion rather than go for a full impeachment trial, in which there's every prospect that Trump's defenders will start calling all of these people, Hunter Biden, Joe Biden, Devon Archer, all of them as witnesses, where apparently Shokin and Lutsenko might also, the former procurators in Ukraine, might also come forward as witnesses. Because all we're doing is we're bringing to the American people the whole story. And there is something I remember that you said right at the very beginning of Ukraine Gate. I've never forgotten it because I thought it was so absolutely spot on. It was, right at the very start, I think back in August, you said that the only thing that the American people are going to take away from this is that Joe Biden and Hunter Biden were up to no good in Ukraine. Well, there we are. Prophetic words.
Yeah, I remember in 2014, I think Zero Hedge ran a couple of stories on this. I ran some stories. Eric Zeus ran some stories. At that time, Alexander, so you can put some things in perspective. My final question to you. At that time, you had, the whole, the Maidan coup. You had the Crimea thing going on. You had sanctions, being leveled on Russia. You had Russia's invading Ukraine. All these things were going on. The war in the East, the Donbass. It was a very chaotic time.
Yeah.
And so in that chaos, you had, as you rightly call, all these carpetbaggers coming in. And basically, the scheme was, let's pump money into Ukraine, lots of money. You've documented it, 45 billion. Let's pump 45 billion in. And let's take a cut.
Yes.
Right? I mean, simply put, I think that was the scheme.
Yes.
If Trump did not win, knowing that the Clinton Foundation and Hillary Clinton's number one donor was Ukraine as well, if Trump did not win, if they did not pursue this whole Russia gate, which morphed into the Ukraine gate witch hunt hoax.
Yes.
Do you think that we'd be seeing today more money going into Ukraine, more money getting taken out, and this, cycle of corruption just keep on going with the Hillary Clinton presidency?
Oh, it would have got much worse. I have absolutely no doubt about it. I mean, you said yourself, Hillary Clinton had an interest in it. I mean, she was getting all this huge amount of money going into the Clinton Foundation from Ukraine. The greatest donations for the Clinton Foundation came from Ukraine. I mean, these people were not putting money in the Clinton Foundation, out of a sense of overwhelming charity and, philanthropy or whatever it is. These are tough, hard-nosed, really, really ruthless people we're talking about in Ukraine. I mean, people like Kolomoisky and Pinchuk and Akhmetov and all these oligarch characters are people you just do not want to mess with. So if they're giving money to you, they're giving it to you for a particular reason. And what they were all wanting is for all this to continue, this very happy situation where the IMF, the US, the European Union just goes on shoveling money into Ukraine. So it goes shoveling out of Ukraine into all sorts of people's bank accounts, into Kolomoisky's bank accounts and Akhmetov's bank accounts and Pinchuk's bank accounts in Cyprus and Switzerland and the Cayman Islands and all sorts of other places. And of course, the various facilitators, the people the people who were providing the Krisher, which we just talked about. And, let's be quite clear about this. All those payments to the Clinton Foundation were also about Krisher. It was about protection. I mean, it's the same thing. Only, of course, this time, you're not going to the vice president. You're going to the person who you think is going to be the president. I mean, just think of all of that. So, of course, the money would have intensified. It would have got much bigger. We would have seen this thing mushroom and grow to probably unbelievable levels. And here comes Donald Trump. And he says, well, actually, I don't really care much about Ukraine. I don't really like giving money to countries, especially corrupt countries, because I really believe that American money, American taxpayers' money should stay in America and make America great again. That's what he says. And apparently that's what he believes. And he's putting the stoppers and all of that. And he's talking about having a rapprochement in Russia. It's not surprising that all these people in Ukraine are terrified. It's not surprising that they pulled out all the stops to prevent him getting elected. It's not surprising that black ledgers were, being, it seems, created in Ukraine to discredit his campaign manager, who was corrupt anyway, by the way, but not in that way. It's not surprising either if people might be helping, Democrat Party organizations and investigative agencies like Fusion GPS by providing fabricated dirt on Donald Trump in the form of a Steele dossier. I mean, it makes complete sense. It all adds up. Now, I mean, there's obviously a high degree of speculation in all of this. I don't pretend to know all the facts. I do know a little bit about this part of the world. I do know a lot about how Ukraine works. I certainly know a lot about how Krisher works, because, as I said, I've actually come across people who've described it to me who are part of this world and who are very conscious of its style of operations. This is, as I said, a classic Krisher scenario. And given that Americans were involved, by the way, not just on the board of Burisma, there were American citizens were actual ministers of the Ukrainian government. There was a woman called Yaresko who was a US citizen. She was Ukraine's finance minister. She was in charge of signing the checks. I mean,
so going off of that, so it wouldn't be a stretch.
Yeah.
that's a great point. It wouldn't be a stretch if you had a finance minister,
No.
an American citizen acting as finance minister, then the propositions made to Vindman to be defense minister had precedent.
Oh, absolutely. Of course they did. A complete precedent. There's nothing unusual about this at all. I mean, Vindman, to his credit, said no. But of course, from a Ukrainian point of view, they're buying people, or they're trying to buy people in the United States. They do this all the time. They thought they bought the vice president by employing his son. And as I said, from their point of view, any money that goes to the son is destined for the father. What the actual arrangements were, I'm not, between the Bidens, I'm not going there. I don't know. That's for somebody to look into and find out. But I'm talking about what the Ukrainians would have thought. And of course, pay money into the Clinton Foundation. You do the same. And you have people like Yaresko there, who's an American citizen, facilitating the whole thing. You have people like Vindman, you try and bring him in to make him defense minister. And of course, one other thing we've discovered as a result of all this impeachment investigation, and another point, by the way, that Giuliani has made, and is the very big role the US embassy in Kiev apparently had in setting up Ukraine's National Anti-Corruption Bureau, and the way that, instead of operating, it seems, as an anti-corruption bureau, was actually also providing protection to some of these people who were involved in these things. So, and by the way, it seems that the embassy official who signed off on this was this man Kent, who we all remember. He was one of the people, he was the State Department official who went before the House of Representatives along with Bill Taylor, and was a supposed important witness that the Democrats called. So we have a situation where the Ukraine managed to buy lots of people, and where all sorts of people in the United States were willing to be bought. There's no other way to put it.
Very, very quickly, Alexander, do you think that we would have had a Zelensky presidency if there was a Hillary Clinton presidency?
No. Oh, no, of course not, because I mean, that's actually, by the way, I never thought of that. It's a very, very good point. I mean, Hillary Clinton would have pulled out all the stops to make sure that Zelensky was defeated. And in fact, there wouldn't even have been, in my opinion, a Zelensky candidate. I mean, the whole point about Zelensky is that he was himself the product of an oligarch turf war, and with the kind of connections that the oligarch in question, who is sponsoring Zelensky, had, Kolomoisky had, he would have had degrees of protection from the Hillary Clinton White House, which would have meant that he wouldn't have needed to run someone like Zelensky. So it would have been a completely different scenario. It would absolutely not have panned out in the way that it has. What you would have seen also, by the way, is considerably more money going into the London property market, more money going into places like Cyprus, more money being channeled through Latvia, all sorts of things like that. And the economic numbers in Ukraine, by the way, might even have looked a bit better, because with money going in and money going out, you can make GDP figures look more impressive than they really are.
But the people are suffering. I mean,
that's the point.
The real economy.
The real economy is going down, and the people are suffering, and their living standards are getting worse and worse and worse. But that's how it works. I mean, can I just say, Russia in the 90s was a bit like that. In fact, it was a lot like that. Ukraine has just taken it a whole stage further. And as I said, a Hillary Clinton White House would have taken it a much greater stage further still, and we would not be looking at a President Zelensky now.
All right, Alexander Mercouris, Editor-in-Chief of the Duran. Thank you very much. Guys, if you like this video, click on the subscribe button down below. Click on that notifications bell to make sure you get notifications when we publish a new video. Check us out on iTunes and on Soundcloud as well for an audio copy of this video. please donate to us on PayPal, Patreon, and Subscribe Star. Your donation helps us out a whole lot, and we really appreciate all the donations that we get very much. Check us out on BitChute, where we post all our videos on BitChute. We also post all our videos on duranvideo.com, which is our own video platform that we're developing. So check us out there as well. We invite you to take a look at duranvideo.com. And also check us out on Telegram, where we post everything we do, including product offers and special deals for Duran Shop merchandise. Alexander, DRN20, that's one of our big holiday coupons that we have out right now. 20% off all merchandise, DRN20 at checkout from theduranshop.com.
Indeed. I mean, we've got Thanksgiving coming, we've got Christmas coming. This is absolutely the right time to stock up on Duran things, amazing products like these fantastic Duran magic mugs that I'm drinking from. By the way, I made a slight difference today because it's been that kind of day. I've been drinking hot chocolate from this one, which is one of Catherine's favorite drinks, and it's absolutely fantastic for hot chocolate. It looks great in it too because it's got this wonderful sort of glossy white color, which makes the hot chocolate look really fantastic. And I have a sort of thing that makes it really frothy also, so it's great. But anyway, we got all these magnificent magic mugs. Look, here's my other one. They've all got their different emblems. One is of Alpha. This Alpha Force is this one, and Alpha Force is this one, and the Russian Federation is that one. But we've got plenty of others, and they are really great, fantastic, phenomenal mugs. Everybody who owns them loves them. I think I can say that. I don't think we had any people coming back and grouching about them, and why should they when they're so great? And we don't just have great mugs, we also have these fantastic shirts, like the long sleeve t-shirts I'm wearing. There's also short sleeve t-shirts, there's v-neck shirts, and there are really amazing polo shirts. And the reason, by the way, all our shirts is so amazing is because we make absolutely sure that we source them from people who make them really well. They are 100% cotton. They are beautifully made. On some, you get our double-headed eagle actually embroidered. This was actually printed on, but it still looks fantastic. It really looks amazingly good. And we don't just have shirts. We've got hats. We've got stickers. We got hoodies, really useful when the weather is as cold as it is in England at the moment. So amazing things on our shop. As Alex rightly says, lots of discounts available. You can find our shop on Telegram. You can find our shop. Well, Alex will tell you how to go to our shop, but let me just also reiterate, search us out on these new platforms that we've been setting up. They are really wonderful. We're very excited with them, and we're very excited by the progress that we're getting on these platforms, which are going to improve our reach tremendously. So what are you waiting for? Go to our shop, stock up on these great things, do yourself a favor for Christmas, for Thanksgiving, for the new year, buy things for your friends, help the Duran also. Alex will tell you how to do it.
theduranshop.com. You'll find a link as well as our special deal, DRN20, 20% off all merchandise in the description box down below. Alexander Mercouris, thank you very much. Until next time, everybody, take care.